Hello, everybody. This is William Del Pilar, and welcome to the Red, White, and Rude podcast, where culture and politics collide. And I bring it all to you and break down how it works and what is true and what is propaganda. So today we have a great show for you. We have Skydance and their vow to end DEI if their Paramount merger can get through. Then we got Superman's overseas box office. It's not doing so well. And the early hype that you're still hearing about isn't really there when you break down the numbers. Then we got to talk about this story. Boy, if this is not a cultural event, I don't know what is. And that is President and First Lady Macron is suing what was once one of my favorite voices in conservative America, Candace Owens, who I believe may have jumped the shark. Well, we'll talk about that lawsuit, the realities of it, and the fact that it's going to be a juicy story to talk about over the next few months. Then we're going to close the show out with the Rude Rundown. And that is the Red, White, and Rouge version of a lightning round. We're going to talk about the Fantastic Four's initial numbers. Not too shabby. Not phenomenal, but not too shabby. American Idol producer shot dead. This story here is a few weeks old, but I wanted to bring it up to light. It's been sitting in my queue for a little while. Same thing with Phoenix and Theo and their anti-Semitism. Joaquin Phoenix, that is. And then an update on the ex-royals, Meghan Markle, with love. Meghan flops. Then a little bit of white racism tossed your way here in terms of a story that came out regarding Johnny Cage and Mortal Kombat. And I tell you, if you have not seen that Carl Urban trailer for Mortal Cage 2, you need to see it. I praise it, saying this is some of the best fan fiction I have seen in terms of a fan video. Turns out it was from the studio. Brilliantly done. Check that out. Then we're going to close it out with a goodbye to some icons from the 1980s. But before we begin, do not forget to bookmark grumblingsmedia.com. Bookmark grumblingsmedia.com. That's where you will find not only the Red, White, and Rude podcast, you will find my political podcast, Fired Up Conservative Talk, where I talk with guests on national issues. Then I have Fired Up California, where I talk all things California. And then my final one, Points on the Board, where that is the intersectionality of sports and politics. And it began, well, I don't know if it began, but, Jackie Robinson signaled the importance of sports in politics, and Colin Kaepernick signaled the worst of sports and politics. So you can check out all those podcasts at grumblingsmedia.com. So make sure you bookmark it, and make sure you follow us, whether you're watching us on YouTube, Rumble, Apple, Spotify, under the handle Grumblings Media. The handle is Grumblings Media. Okay, let's get right down to it. Skydance promises to end DEI. Review bias if FCC approves merger with Paramount. And that is a story by Sean Moran of the infamous site called Breitbart, where they do some damn good reporting. So Skydance, and I always have a few articles I reference, and I'll have AI work its magic, and then I collaborate with another source to make sure all my data is correct. But I always like to give credit at times to the original source. So the topic overview here, what am I talking about? Well, Skydance Media's $8 billion bid to merge with Paramount Global. That's what I'm talking about. And it hinges on FCC approval. And they have made promises to dismantle DEI policies. And they will also install an ombudsman to scrutinize bias at CBS News. That's been a long time coming. And that is amid federal probes into media distortion, also known as fake news. So the commitment arises as Paramount settles a $16 million lawsuit with President Trump. And that is being settled because they know that they're facing scrutiny over an ideological imbalance with their programming. They skew hard left. Now, what I found surprising, and we're not going to talk about it, I just want to bring it up to you, So you're aware. I always try to bring receipts. I call them receipts, but I try to validate what I talk to you about. Well, Trump came out and said that he anticipates an additional 20 million, and that could potentially bring this total to about 36 million. So I'm like, whoa, Trump is taking these news sources to the cleaners because they bank on the Sullivan Act, which is a SCOTUS decision that means you literally have to go well above the normal means to show that they're biased, any news network. And I believe it got so bad, and these judges and many of them activists were so, they didn't hear, it didn't matter what they said, they would sit there and reference the Sullivan Act to protect these media sources. Well, it's become so blatant, the line, even these judges can't protect them. And I think that's why you're seeing a lot of these settlements. But regardless, this merger could transform Paramount's news and entertainment by kind of chucking the bias that we see and start allowing for a broader viewpoint, some diversity in the news. And obviously this is driven by the federal scrutiny they are now under. And there's pretty much a mandate by the people for ideological balance, except for the hardcore left. I, as a conservative, I just want balance in the news. I remember when I first got together with my partner, I said, look, I saw this in Panama as a kid and I recognized it. He who controls the communications controls the country. And that's every time. See, I firmly believe that includes hiding voter fraud, creating lies out of half-truths, meaning there's a truth, they turn it into a half-truth, then they just completely turn it into a lie, like the Russia hoax. And we're now finding out about that. That's a different podcast, my Fired Up podcast. Check it out at grumblingsmedia.com. So what do we hope to get out of this? Well, or rather, what brought them to this point? The Kamala Harris interview. But they have a history of this. Dan Rather, George Bush, Hunter Biden laptop coverage, the COVID hospital footage swap. So those are some of the things I want to talk about as we talk about this topic unto itself. But there's also why this is a just decision. We'll talk about the DEI removal and try to create a framework to show why this is a good thing. So Skydance is looking right now for FCC approval. Again, an $8 billion merger to take over Paramount Global. So now they're committing to eliminating Paramount's DEI policies post-merger because Skydance itself has no programs. Now, the FCC needs to get that in writing in terms of massive $1 trillion penalty if they don't follow through. That's how you do it. And then we should do what the Democrats did, redistribute that money to conservative nonprofits. That's what Democrats do with a lot of these type of decisions. And they get away with it. And I don't want to do that, but you fight fire with fire. As soon as they start bitching and complaining about it, you point out how they did it. And hopefully sound minds down the road will go, okay, we got to stop this completely. So Paramount's already eliminated or modified DEI programs across their platform of companies to align with the equal opportunity commitments and governing law. So what's that mean? They've whacked their DEI programs and they're saying they're going to follow the law and they're going to hire the most qualified individuals. Why? DEI is a form of racism that favors everyone but Anglos. And then it puts gender above all. Specifically, it puts males at the bottom of the rung. Now, people are saying, that's not true. This is what DEI means. It doesn't matter what DEI means. The actions show what I am saying to be true. So don't look at what they say. Look at the results. Word to the wise, if you're in HR and you hire people, and they're in a resume, do not look for what they say they've done. Look for what they've actually successfully accomplished and grill them on that. All right, teachable moment over. So DEI takes away from hiring the most qualified individuals and allows for unqualified and inferior people at those jobs to be hired, which means services and products are going to be subpar for you, the end user. We see it in Hollywood. There are a lot of nasty movies out there, a lot of nasty shows, and they don't get viewers. And Hollywood's saying, well, they blame everybody but themselves. And why? Because you're putting a biased system. In Hollywood, they're sending a message. In airlines, crashes. You remember that all-female crew that crash, maybe what, 6-8 months ago, that kind of flew under the radar. Once it came out, it was a DEI crew. Hell, our Supreme Court Justice, Ketanji Brown Jackson, is a DEI hire. Don't take my word. That's what former President Joe Biden himself said. He said, this is my DEI hire. The two top qualifications being a woman and being black. Not the most qualified, but that was how he put it. So, Skydance, once they say this merger's through, they're going to do a comprehensive review of CBS, including hiring an ombudsman to address complaints of bias, as well as other concerns. And the reason I say that is you will have somebody to go to talk to make your complaint versus an HR that will bury it because the higher ups want DEI. So I would not be shocked that ombudsman is a liaison between the government and Paramount. Now, that's not right, William. Their company, we did it with police departments. Obama did. He would just raise an accusation and take over. The Justice Department would oversee them. So be careful what you wish for, because precedent has been set. So Skydance's general counsel, Stephanie Kiyoko McKinnon, she's also co-president of business operations. What she said was that, quote, after consummation of the proposed transaction, Paramount's new management will ensure that the company's array of news and entertainment programming embodies a diversity of viewpoints across the political and ideological spectrum, consistent with varying perspective of the viewing audience. Meaning they're going to have unbiased news, and whether it's entertainment or political or whatnot. Now, here's the kicker. We've got to stay on top of this, because that will eventually go leftist. They always do. Our news media is owned by less than 10 corporations. I think around the world, it's like 20 corporations own most of the media around the world. So why is this happening? Well, because the FCC is investigating CBS News for potential news distortion. Why? Well, they completely changed the Kamala Harris interview. CBS aired 2 conflicting versions of Kamala Harris's comments on Israel, editing out inconsistencies to portray her more favorable. They wanted her to look presidential. I mean, she actually spoke, Israel should, I think they need, holding someone accountable. That's how she spoke. They completely pulled that, took a conversation from another interview and put it in there. Yes, I think, Bob, that Israel should be held accountable for all the transgressions they have done. And my administration will most definitely do that. And that's how she spoke. More presidential. I mean, I just threw the words out there, but she was more presidential. And they did this, in my opinion, and the opinion of tens of millions of Americans, to make her look presidential, to distort how we perceived her. You see, Mark Halperin, who knows his stuff, but also was fired for sexual harassment, said, that's just normal what CBS did. That's just normal. And the reason I brought up his sexual harassment is he called it flirtation. If he can't tell the difference between harassing a woman versus flirtation, I got issues with his judgment. And I say that because he turned around and said what CBS did. That's just how the system works. No, you can cut up a soundbite for a commercial for time. You don't change a soundbite. You don't splice a soundbite. You just editorially, in an unbiased manner, shorten it. They completely replaced the conversation. So Mark Halperin is an idiot, and he's lying to you. And there's a bias in there with Mark, I believe. And this isn't CBS's first rodeo. Dan Rather with George W. Bush. CBS aired a 60 Minutes 2 report alleging George W. Bush received Air National Guard favoritism. But it relied on unverified memos, and they were forgeries, proven to be forgeries. Led to a major scandal. And Dan Rather's, you need to resign because your time's coming to an end, or we're going to be forced to fire you. And they wanted him to resign because they didn't want to go through the headache of a fire and all the hoopla that would bring. And let's not forget everybody's favorite Hunter Biden laptop coverage. Or rather, the suppression of it. CBS fired investigative reporter Catherine Herridge because of this. She didn't want to suppress it. It was all her work. And they suppressed her coverage on all these topics. Then they seized her personal files, which triggered a House Judiciary investigation into press freedom and internal censorship. I'm not done with CBS. The COVID hospital footage swap. That was in 2020, for those of you who've forgotten. CBS aired footage from an overwhelmed Italian hospital during segments on COVID conditions in New York and Pennsylvania. They were making you believe that the hospital they were talking about, the video was that hospital. Then they called it an editing mistake. It wasn't an editing mistake. They were deliberately fear-mongering. I got sinus issues. So, Skydance CEO David Ellison, he who happens to be the son of Oracle co-founder Larry Ellison, he says they're going to emphasize American storytelling and a commitment to unbiased journalism. So that's a good thing, because the news is supposed to be unbiased. Right now, this biased news, this biased Hollywood, this biased programming is pushing us into a socialist country where socialism has failed, and they're trying to take out the Constitution. They're ignoring the Constitution for feelings, nothing more but feelings. All right, I know I can't sing. So it's a good thing. Now we have to hold their feet to the fire and make sure they follow through. FCC isn't done, and rightfully so. They should not be done. They launched investigations into DEI at Disney and at Comcast, NBC Universal. In July, my provider, they announced they would end its DEI policies, which FCC Administrator Chairman Brendan Carr described as invidious discrimination. And that's T-Mobile I'm referring. So these pledges do underscore a potential industry-wide pushback against DEI mandates. And it's pushing back against a media bias that is intensifying federal oversight. So what do I mean? Big dog, big brother's watching to make sure the playing field is level. But we can't have that, because right now it's Trump and we know he wants it to change. What happens if it's an Obama clone next time? So we've got to be able to get these corporations to understand what's right and what's wrong. Can they? Unlikely. But we got to hold their feet to the fire with boycotts. Conservatives have learned how to boycott, and we should. People who say boycotts are wrong, go screw yourself. Go screw yourself. This is America. We have the freedom to boycott. And if we want to organize boycotts, that's our freedom too. You may not like it, but that's America. I find it's all these people who disagree with America in our value system. What are you doing here? They're cowards. They won't leave the country. And you know why? There is no better country. Speaking about America, let's talk about Superman's overseas box office, how it faces attribution and market hurdles and is not the massive hit they claim it is. So James Gunn's Superman film, it's done well domestically, but it has not cratered, but faltered quite a bit internationally. And the director, Gunn, says this is because of rising global anti-American attitudes and geopolitical strains. And he's right. Despite deliberate efforts to soften the character's patriotic roots, which has created a backlash and made that domestic haul much lower than what it could have been, it's also destroyed us globally. And I'm going to explain why. But that said, their overseas earnings are lagging behind expectations. Why? Well, because of James Gunn and his people. And in their defense, there are geopolitical ramifications, specifically China, which is one of the biggest markets, the most corrupt market. It's Hollywood gets like pennies on the dollar. We're here, they get a good chunk of it. But that's how corrupt China is. But now even they're saying, we don't like this movie, and you guys are beating us up economically with Trump, so we're going to punish you guys a little bit. So why is it struggling overseas? I'm going to talk about the box office performance in terms it's not doing as well as what they say. And I use two multipliers. The break-even multiplier a fair number, and then a number where it needs to hit this to start making money. And Superman is woke by omission. What do you mean woke by omission, William? Well, I'll talk about that too. So Superman opened what's today? The 26th. Woo! Wow. 2 weeks ago. 3 weeks ago. It opened up approximately 3 weeks ago. And 125 million domestically. And it was a lot of theaters, 4,100 theaters. You break that down by theaters and the split that, so my point is that's a lot of theaters, more than norm. It had an above average marketing push. It debuted at 95 million overseas, about through 79 markets, the biggest markets, mind you. As it slowly expands other markets, it's diminishing returns, and it fell short of the 100. They're predicting about 125 million. But then they said, well, we'll be happy with 100 million. Well, it fell short of both of those. However, as of today or yesterday, it has reached 472 million worldwide, counting domestic and global. 272 million from North America and about 201 million internationally. Now, the numbers for this weekend are tabulated out based off Thursday, Friday, some of the early returns and formulas, and they're pretty not straight on, but they tend to be pretty close. But the point here is they've only had about a 42% of total gross from overseas markets, and those markets usually bring you about a 60 to 70% gross. So that's about a 30%, 20 to 30% drop. So projections, like I was saying, they tabulate this out. They're saying by the end of this weekend, it will have crossed 500 million globally. So let's talk about the cost for this before we get into why it's failing. Based on the most recent data, the production budget is about 225 million. I'm splitting it down the middle in terms of the high lows. And that 225 million does count their incentives and the rebates they get. Marketing costs, I am being very generous here because I've been told it's 200 million, not the 125 million. I'm being very generous. And that includes global campaigns and promotional stunts. So it's really 200 million. I'm trying to be generous, and I'm saying 125 million. So you combine this is about 350 million. So current worldwide gross is about 472 million. So the break-even point using a 2.5, 2.5 multiplier is 875 million. That accounts for theater shares, which is typically about 50% of gross going to the studio. With China, it's much less. Marketing, distribution, and other costs are involved as well. So right now, they're below the threshold of breaking even, well below it. So it needs an additional 400 million. Now, it's peaked. It made its most money. It earned like 50 million or probably earned 30 million this weekend. That's going to keep going down domestically. So it has peaked. Now, for it to start generating a profit, it's going to need at least 900 million. If I use the 200 million in marketing, it would need easily about 1.1 billion to break even. So we're going to stick with about 900 million. It's only at 472, 500 million. It needs another 400 million. It doesn't have the legs to crack 400 million and make the profit they need. It may break even and may get close to breaking even. Then after you get the streaming releases, which you probably won't have any streaming releases because it's Warner Brothers and they're going to have it on Max for about a year and a half. After about a year and a half, 2 years, then it'll go to Netflix, Amazon, and other places. Maybe a year. Because, they want the whole DC franchise to be rebooted. And so they may release it early to get the hoopla up. But it's not going to hit. It's not a blockbuster. So all this talk is just that talk from an alleged pedophile in James Gunn. And yes, people. Back in the day, he was fired from Guardians of the Galaxy for pedophilia type tweets he made where they had canceled conservatives, including comedians. And he said, and what happened? They waited till it died down, then they rehired him. There is no justice. It's about who you know and who you blow. Right, James? Now, do I believe he's a pedophile? No, I believe he made a terrible, stupid joke. But I believe this, he wasn't held to account like others. So meaning he was treated differently. Like I said, it's who you know, who you blow, right, James? So this movie needs an additional 440 million before it can even start. That's where the profit will start. I don't think so. This movie realistically needs to hit about 1.5 billion for it to be called a true big tent success. And the problem here isn't necessarily the money it brought in; it's how much it costs. And studios are eventually going to wisen up and go, no, we're not going to sit there and spend 300 million. 350 million. And they probably more likely was 400 million to make this movie. We're not. We are not. They're idiots. When a big AAA game comes out, I don't know if they still do it, but back in the day, they would create these kits with the trailers, with the characters, and all the fans could come in, create the websites, and have their own little piece of it on there. And it was marketing. It was genius marketing. That's how some of these movies need to be done, but they won't. Now, James, let's get to the global recognition gap here. James Gunn noted that Superman is not a known comedy in some places, which is a complete and utter lie. When he says Batman's a better known comedy, that's just an unadulterated lie. It's just disgusting that he actually says that. But he's saying that because while he may be saying, rah, rah, we're doing great, privately, oh, hell. We're barely going to break even if we do that. So he has to sit there and shape a narrative. Well, Superman's just not known around the world. Yeah, he is. So he's saying that there's not the international brand familiarity. And he also attributes it to the weaker overseas performance because of anti-American sentiment around the world. And he's framing the film's domestic reception and trajectory as a total win. No, it's not a total win. Had he shut his trap up, those numbers domestically would be even higher. I would have gone out to see it, but I'm not going to support a bigot like James. I'm just not going to. Sorry. But he highlighted domestic embrace and described the movie as a seed of the tree for DC's future. It's not. It's a seed, but it's more like a eucalyptus that sways and breaks versus an oak. And why? Well, he had comments on the political themes. Well, it's about immigration. No, it's not. Superman was nothing about immigration. Well, he's from a pound. Yeah, okay. Let's take your point of view. Because what Gunn is trying to defend is illegal aliens. So let's take that point of view. Immigrants are supposed to be able to come here and contribute. We want the best of the best. I think Superman will fall under that classification. I don't think he'd fall under your basic illegal alien. But then he downplayed the remarks and said to us, screw them, referring to us, because he knew he was caught. He spoke without thinking, like he did with the pedophilia jokes. He was dismissal towards fans attached to traditional elements like me, like truth, justice, the American way, and American symbolism. And then he also sat there and pretended, how Superman woke. How Superman woke. And then he clarified that while it touches on immigrant themes, the core is about kindness, which he noted was once a valued American trait. It is by conservatives. To this day, we teach people how to fish so they can learn how to fish on their own and become better fishermen than us. No, James Gunn, he teaches illegals how to be lazy pieces of crap. How the government will take care of you as long as you keep voting Democrat. That's the difference between Gunn and myself and Gunn and conservatives. So kindness is a value trait, but not amongst Gunn and his kind. So what do I mean by, so the film modifies Superman's classic slogan from truth, justice, and the American way to like truth, justice, the human way. And this marketing strategy started right around 2006, right about the time that DC superhero market was cratering. Because they wanted to de-emphasize pro-American traits for a global audience. But here's the thing. America was once beloved worldwide. This is the woke we're referring to and part of the problem. It's not accepted worldwide, nor is the character universally applauded as Superman used to be. Because Superman represented America exceptionalism that included kindness. When you saw that American flag, oh my God, they're here to help. Not anymore. And that's because of people like Gunn, who's worth probably tens and tens of millions because of this country, yet he demonizes this country. Again, an alleged pedophile based off his own tweets, based off the rules Democrats implemented back then. That's how I judge Gunn. Now, some of the overseas challenges include diminished reliance on China, as I said earlier, because the government is prioritizing local nationalist films. They're patriotic. Chinese are patriotic to Chinese. And they understand they don't need the garbage. They don't need the James Gunns of the world. Now, this has been exacerbated because of and this is what Gunn was referring to. Me know Donald Trump's policies. They're divisive. That's what he's implying. But yet they brought in billions to America. And we have $37 trillion debt because we're so kind we help the world. Trump has re-leveled the playing field so America can't be taken advantage of. But because Hollywood is woke, this is part of China's retaliatory efforts to blame America and not China, not the fact that we have documentation of their human rights abuses towards American products by limiting and not allowing our products to get into their country. They steal our technology. What happens is you'll get a product, a software product, within months, there will be a Chinese version of that product, and you'll find that American code in there. But Hollywood would rather blame Trump than look at the real culprit of China and not understand you can make movies at a much lesser cost of high quality and make a killing here domestically, and then it remains gravy train. But because they have alienated the American audience so bad, they need the world, the global audience to make ends meet. Hollywood's built on greed and elitism, and anything that cuts into that is deemed bad for America. But it's not. In reality, it's about them and their wealth. I mean, you know, they talk about equality and equity. Well, then why are other actors earning 10, 20, 30 million and then royalties? What about the people below them? They don't earn as much. And what about when COVID hit? Movies kept going. You saw no actors fighting to open anything up. They were okay with everything being closed, but them. These are some of the biggest hypocrites in the world. Rob Reiner. You know, his daddy, Carl Reiner, was back in the 50s, kept women down, kept blacks down, kept them all down, my brothers and sisters. But here's Carl blaming Trump. No, Carl needs to look in the mirror. James Gunn is part of that world by hypocrites. So Superman's international haul is actually weaker than 2013's Man of Steel. Of course, they had Henry Cavill. He's an international superstar. And the story, by then DC, I had given up on DC. So maybe one day I'll catch it, but I've yet to see Man of Steel. Plus, he kills somebody there. Superman doesn't kill. I got in a debate with this on somebody on X, had to show him the history of how Superman became a symbol of truth, justice, American way, and not killing. Superman's franchises, though, since the Christopher Reeve era, the golden age of Superman on television, have been downplayed from being patriotic. Why? Because they rely on the international and they think playing America down. See, Trump is bringing respect back to America. He's bringing it back to the point when somebody sees the American flag, they go, oh, they're there to help. Versus Biden, Obama, Bush, Carter. Those are presidents I remember that destroyed America. I was too smart to remember Nixon. This movie will likely be the high point of the franchise. Rarely do sequels do as well as original, except for, ironically, Superman 2, which was a much better film than Superman. Christopher Reeve's version. This movie is not that. And the numbers, as I described to you, will bear that out. So these international box office results spotlight accountability for decisions that alter the core American heroic ideals. And to me, this is potentially going to fuel long-term fallout for DC's global strategy. Sure, you have geopolitical factors in play and market shifts at play as well. But this episode underscores national cultural exports vulnerability. If you go away from American exceptionalism, American kindness, meaning you got to tell the people, this is what we've done, this is what we're doing. Look at our actions. When you just play the victim in America bad, the rest of the world looks at it that way too. Because movies with anti-American values, which there are hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands, over the last 20 years, people start that narrative starts to cut through. And that's one reason it's a soft market for Superman, because of James Gunn's own doing, rather his side, the side of bigotry, the side that isn't afraid to make jokes about kids being raped, thinks that's funny. Those people. So this movie will barely hit the break-even point, will not make a big profit, if a profit at all, which means, in my eyes, it's a failure because they needed a massive big tent hit to launch the DC universe. Didn't happen. All right. The Macron sued Candace Owens over transgender conspiracy claims. So French President Emmanuel Macron and his significant other, because we don't know, Brigitte, have launched a defamation lawsuit against a conservative podcaster. And that conservative is Candace Owens, accusing her of spreading baseless claims that Brigitte is actually a man and that her marriage involves incest and fraud. Now, this was filed in Delaware Superior Court last week's 219-page complaint details how Owens' podcast series, Becoming Brigitte, and social media posts have amplified these allegations to millions. We all knew this already. She was just bringing in the facts as she discovered them. So the suit highlights the personal and global humiliation they claim has been inflicted on them. So let me say this. Before Candace's Brigitte, Becoming Brigitte came, I looked at her, I'm like, you an ugly woman. You a fugly woman. What the hell does he see in you? You look like a toothpick. You walk like a man. You got this wig. There's pictures of you with a bulge. I'm like, I don't care if you're a man or a woman. But this is stuff I was seeing well before Candace's series came out. It's a podcast series called Becoming Brigitte. So to defend Candace on that point, this was out there well before. Now we're going to talk about some of Candace Owens' work. Her previous work has been spot on. And remember, we still have the First Amendment here, and that's an American hallmark, whereas Macron can sit there and not like somebody and get him thrown in jail over in France. So there are some serious legal challenges the Macrons have to deal with in a defamation lawsuit, and I'm pretty sure they thought that they could sit there and bully her. They're going to look to bully her behind the scenes, but I don't know. And they're going to look to drag this out to try to drain her of her wealth. She could always ask for the courts for her costs to be paid. And she's got a lot of supporters out there, so I think that will fail. But the lawsuit's filing and some of the core details, want to talk a little bit about that. Now, the Macrons do say her Owens statements are outlandish, defamatory, and far-fetched fictions, and demonstrably false, and that Owens aware of their falsity. They claim that Owens twisted the couple's marriage, friends, appearance, family, and personal history into a grotesque narrative designed to inflame and degrade. Maybe she did, maybe she didn't. I don't follow Candace anymore. I used to admire the young girl, the young woman, not anymore. I mean, I think she's gone as anti-Semite as you can. That's just my opinion. Maybe she isn't, boy, but she sure sounds it. Now, the Macrons, this is where I think they're wrong, but they state that these lies caused tremendous damage and subjected them to a campaign of global humiliation. I think Brigitte slapping Macron himself. Emmanuel, I had to go look that up, himself has led to more humiliation than anything she said. Now, the interesting thing here, the lead attorney for the Macrons is Thomas A. Clare of Clare Locke in Alexandria, Virginia. A very corrupt individual in my eyes. He's one of the lead attorneys in the Dominion voting system defamation case against Fox News. And we don't know the intricacies of that, but I think there was a deal done in there. Part of that deal was to get rid of Tucker, who's another guy who I've subscribed to support early on. This guy's lost it. Tucker has daddy issues, is as close to being an anti-Semite as well. Now, Owens stated in March that she would stake her entire professional reputation on the fact that Brigitte Macron, the first lady of France, is in fact a man. In fact, she told a story how President Trump called her, "Hey, man, the Macrons call me. They want you to lay off." So Owens has this 8-episode podcast series, Becoming Brigitte. That's on her X account and she has about 7 million followers. So she does have some sway, with 700 million followers in a country of 350 million. And then you're talking globally, what, 8-9 billion? You have a tough time showcasing that she has massive influence. Now, Owens alleged that the Macrons are related by blood, making their relationship incestuous, and that they commit forgery and fraud to hide secrets. And they're also claiming that he was chosen for his role as part of a CIA-operated MK Ultra program or similar mind control program. So Owens, and that's what the Macrons are saying or that's what Owens claims. Now it's not as black and white as I'm making it sound. It's very nuanced. She's a very nuanced woman. And the reason I say that is because I've seen parts of some of her shows. She layers things. It's like she follows A to B to C all the way to get to Z. So me just saying that sounds like, huh? But she layers it. And I truly think she believes this, whether right or wrong. Now, Owens labels herself as an investigative journalist, and I agree. Once you start to break stories, once you start to put stories out there in a journalistic fashion, yes, you don't have to go to journalism school to be a journalist. In fact, the worst journalists in the world come from journalism school because they indoctrinate you. They don't teach you how to be a true reporter, how to investigate, how to be unbiased. They teach none of that. The Macrons say that she's looking for fame. She already has that, especially after her firing from the Daily Wire. Look, she had her fame, her following. She had all that before she went to the Daily Wire. So they really don't have much there. And the Macrons note that Owens has promoted conspiracy theories, including anti-vaccine falsehoods. Whoa. You lost me there, Emmanuel. I think that smackdown that Brigitte gave you, it's a powerful punch coming from from your spouse. Owens was spot on the vaccine, spot on about myocarditis, the push to vaccinate low-risk children, Big Pharma's indemnity deal that shielded them from liability while they raked in hundreds of billions of dollars. She was right from day one, as I was. I keep saying people do not get vaccinated. In fact, daily disclosures, they continue to expose how rushed the approval was and how suppressed risks were hidden, or how risks were suppressed. The point is, stuff's coming out still daily that shows the vaccine was not good. Boy, I screwed up with my notes here. Now, Owens Representative Mitchell Jackson of BCC Communications said, quote, "Candace Owens is not shutting up. This is a foreign government attacking the First Amendment rights of an American independent journalist," unquote. That is one way to look at it. And he went on to add, quote, "Candace repeatedly requested an interview with Brigitte Macron. Instead of offering comment, Brigitte is resorting to trying to bully a reporter into submission," unquote. Now that has legitimacy. She kept saying she's asked for an interview. So they were probably like, don't worry about it. Don't do that. So they got sick of it. They decided to go to court. Instead, most courts will recognize, well, why didn't you do the interview? See if you can square this out before wasting my time and the American people's time. I think that's a fair question. Now, we got to remember, we still have the First Amendment, which is an American standard, American hallmark, which separates us from France. The First Amendment guarantees freedom of the press to all journalists, mainstream or independent. protecting their right to publish, criticize public figures, and report on matters of public concern without government interference or censorship. I'll say this: if Candace loses this, mainstream media is screwed, because this will be used as precedent. This lawsuit. So a little bit on the background here of the Macrons. They met when Emmanuel was 15 and Brigitte was, I put in my notes, when Brigitte was his 39-year-old high school teacher. I should have put the Macrons met when Emmanuel was 15 and Brigitte was a 39-year-old high school teacher. So that's triggering reactions, or that has triggered reactions since his 2017 election as president. You know, he's seen as a duck with a C. You do know that. That's how the world actually views Emmanuel Macron. He tries to be this tough guy, but America, we should view him, bro, do you have anything swinging there? Because it seems like she's the one swinging it off. The way you look and the way you act, it's like, it's just terrible. It's not just me, you know, the infamous now Tucker Carlson, an embarrassment to conservatism, and Joe Rogan, who shows his lack of ability to understand anything. They joined discussions on Owens' claims as well. So this is starting to make the rounds. Now, so what are the legal challenges? Well, as public figures, the Macrons must prove Owens acted with actual malice. They had to prove she knew her statements were false or with reckless disregard to the truth, for the truth. And with an 8-part series, that's going to be tough to prove, especially with the fact it's out there for everybody to see. And you can see, you're like, damn, this woman believes it. No, that's the standard that has come from SCOTUS. This is a real test, though. Will the courts protect an independent journalist that the mainstream media hates and that activist judges hate? This is going to be a test. Will the courts protect her, a hated independent journalist, as they do the mainstream media, who they view as darlings? Again, especially activist judges. So this actual malice requirement creates an almost insurmountable barrier, especially for public figures, which is what it was created for. And this applies in terms of defamation litigation. So actual malice is required. And that's what makes this literally insurmountable, this case. It demands clear-cut evidence, irrefutable, of the defendant's state of mind beyond mere negligence or error. So they got to go above and beyond the norms if it was a private person being sued. They're literally impossible for plaintiffs to win. And that's why that's why some of these recent victories, the CNN one, was shocking to many. But I thought it was great. Finally, we saw justice. CNN accused this guy of helping people out of Afghanistan, but only rich people. They pretty much said he was doing it for the money. He was a bounty hunter, or not a bounty hunter. He was just literally doing it for the money. I don't even know why they bothered with that story, but he wasn't. And he was able to prove that. He got a $5 million. His name was Young. He got a $5 million decision against him. Then the punitive claims were going to be next. The punitive figure numbers. So CNN settled. And it turns out after the jury was talked to, they said, yeah, we're looking at in the excess of $100 million because of how badly they treated him. So it is becoming easier to win, but most of these cases are settled out because they see the writing on the wall. But in this one, I think the Macrons don't have a shot in hell. Owens' defense emphasizes First Amendment protections for speech. They are framing it as an attack on journalistic freedom. And she's right. The international aspect of the case involving a foreign public figure suing an American commentator, lots of jurisdictional hurdles here to overcome. Not to mention a lot of embarrassment for the Macrons, because a lot comes out. A lot of rich people use this to threaten and bully you, hoping to get some kind of settlement or to get you to drop everything. because they know if it goes, well, there's something called deposition. That's where all the juicy tidbits come out. And Owens continued her assertions and dismissed the lawsuit as a public relations strategy. So, here's some of the words Candace has used since this suit was made public. Quote, I don't know who needs to hear this, but if you have to file a lawsuit in a foreign country to prove to the world that you are a woman, it is because you most certainly are not one, unquote. Then she referenced a statement from former French Justice Minister Eric Dupont-Moretti. He's a big-time Macron ally. He called the allegations a matter of state and suggested connection to Russia, the Le Pen family, and a Catholic pilgrimage, meaning this is a conspiracy against his friend Emmanuel to make him look bad. And it's being perpetrated by Russia, the Le Pen family, and the Catholic pilgrimage, Catholics. Owens dismissed all that as conspiracy theory rhetoric. And this will come up in court, and she'll use this to show how the Macrons are trying to portray this, meaning they're doing their own lying out there. So she responded to some of her legal critics by asserting the lawsuit contains falsehoods, including about her citizenship. I guess they're claiming she's dual citizen or something like that. And she began highlighting sections of the lawsuit where the Macrons described their relationship origins, framing it as evidence of inappropriate behavior rather than defamation defense. And I agree with her. So Owens is referring to a statement where Macron state, quote, remain within the bounds of the law, unquote. Because Brigitte was 39, he was 15. That's statutory rape in 99.9% of the, well, in most of the states in our country. She was 39, he was 15. Again, that would be deemed as statutory rape in the United States. But in France, it was legal because the French law sets the age of sexual consent at 15. And there's no evidence of criminal conduct. Now, here's the kicker. Those laws don't apply here, meaning Americans, they're going to look at that. Damn, woman. What position were you all in? So Owens was dismissing the claims of her dual citizenship that they were claiming for whatever reason as implausibly stupid. And I don't get that. I don't. Regardless, my friends, this is just the start. This lawsuit is going to underscore the tensions between free expression in our country and the boundaries of defamation when targeting public figures across international lines. And I think we're going to win, hands down. And it's not that I support what she's saying, is I support her right to say it. What I don't support is if she flat out lied and knew about it, then she should pay the price. But I think she really knew. All right, let's get down to the rude rundown. That is my version of a lightning round. The Fantastic Four, first steps. They're looking at about $125 million opening, and that matches Superman's box office weekend. So it's projected to earn 120 to 125 million. And that does align with Superman's performance. It stars Pedro Pascal, the bigot, Joseph Quinn, Vanessa Kirby, the feminist, feminazi, in my eyes, and Ebon Moss Bachrach. And I don't know who's playing Johnny Storm. I forget the name of the actor, but he's no longer a magnet for the chicks. So they completely changed a lot of aspects of this. Completely. But America's hungry for a hit, so it'll do well the first weekend. Just like Marvel's have done pretty well at 100 million, but it's the legs. Will it have the legs? No one knows yet. So the 1960s retro futuristic style, I thought that was phenomenal. I loved it. I so badly wanted to go see it, but I'm not going to support bigotry and anti-American hate. And Pedro Pascal, a bigot. And then they made Silver Surfer a woman. No, that's not true. %71% were under age 35. Latino Hispanics came out. Asian Americans were 11%. Latinos and Asians came out in higher numbers than Superman. Superman came out in higher numbers with Anglos. That's called homophily. Look it up. Homophily for the arrogant morons out there. Now, here's a kicker, though. Full marketing costs we haven't found out. The movie costs about 200 million. It's traditional to have about 100 million in marketing. So you're looking at about 300 million. So you're looking at about 600, 700 million it'll need to break even. Right around, I say 700 million. Can it? I don't know. I don't know. We'll find out, though. I'm going to give a full report on this movie next week. Now, I'm still debating on seeing it. What I do is I gather all the reports and I bring that to you. The numbers is what I'm talking about. But I may go see it. May get out and go see it to give you a review of it too. But we'll see. Story number 2, suspect allegedly used victim's own gun in murder of American Idol music supervisor and partner. So this story came out a little while ago. 22-year-old Encino resident here in California is accused of burglarizing and fatally shooting a couple in their home using their own firearm. And one of the victims was a longtime music supervisor for American Idol. Here's my issue. Raymond Bedorian allegedly killed Robin K. 70 and Thomas DeLuca 70. That's her age. During a burglary in their Encino residence. The bodies were discovered on July 14th during the welfare check. Now, they had cause, said something's up over there, and the cops couldn't get in. They looked over the fence, looked somewhere to me, and that was it. Terrible policing. Terrible policing. And the cops were able to track this guy down because he called them. It led to his July 15th arrest. He called them from the scene on his cell phone, identifying himself by name. I guess he was trying to report something odd, I guess. So he's has 2 counts of murder, robbery, burglary, intentional firearm use, and multiple murders, and is being held without bail. But my issue here is he's been previously suspected of battery threats and brandishing a weapon. He was released from jail last year after the judge dismissed the case following mental health evaluation. Meaning, well, we can't keep him in there. He's a little bit messed up in the head. We've got to find a way to hold judges accountable. I'm serious. Nothing's going to happen to this judge, but this judge has blood on his hands. This judge is responsible for the murder of these 2 people. I'll keep following this story and bring you some of the updates as to what happens to him. But that's where we stand right now. A judge let out somebody who probably likely belonged in a sanitarium. Let him out. And this irks me all the way back to 30 years ago when a judge who was going through a divorce had a guy in front of his court who had a restraining order. Well, I didn't mean to. It was an accident. Okay, I'm going to let you off. I'm not going to hold you to the restraining order and throw you in jail. That's pretty rough. The guy killed the wife a week later. It turns out the judge was going through his own divorce. That was pretty nasty. When they asked the judge if he had any remorse or thought he may have made the wrong decision, nope. That was his answer. That judge is going to burn in hell, and I hope so for all eternity. Rundown number 3. Joaquin Phoenix praises Theo Von's anti-Semitic Gaza genocide claim as courageous. Actor Joaquin Phoenix went on Theo Von's podcast to commend Von's prior statements, labeling Israel's actions in Gaza's genocide. Israel can do whatever the hell they want. They've been attacked by every nation in the Middle East because they want to genocide the Israelis. October, a couple years ago now, or a year ago now. A couple years ago now? Yeah. Year ago. Everybody conveniently forgets about that. Everybody lies about the fact that Hamas hides behind civilians. Hamas is taking the food for their own men. Hamas, the whole infrastructure used to help them become a nation state, has been used for terrorism. Joaquin Phoenix and Theo Von are stupid freaking morons. Phoenix called Von's May 2025 emotional declaration courageous and meaningful, inspiring Phoenix's rare podcast appearance. Von reflected on that fear, speaking out, saying, I was scared to say that they're fucking words. Excuse me, sorry, they're freaking words. Look, Gaza, this study was done. Gaza civilian casualty ratios align with urban warfare patterns, not genocide. And me, I would hold aid. Yes, that will speed up the end of the war. All they're doing is feeding them, keeping them fat and happy. The terrorists are going to be eating all that food. Everybody knows it. Anti-Semitic incidents in the U.S. have reached 9,400 in 2024, up 5% from 2023, and up 344% over 5 years. Hey, being an anti-Semite's a new trend with the left. 58% of them have been linked to Israel or Zionism amid the Gaza conflict. Campuses saw 1,700 incidents. Why? Because the campuses wouldn't do nothing, and they encouraged this anti-Semitism, up 84%. Next week, I may or may not, it's probably more apt for one of my political podcasts, but somebody's suing Colombia. Colombia just settled $200 million lawsuit from the feds. Why? Because they were allowing anti-Semites to literally do what they want freely, to threaten people, scare people, physically harass people. So yeah, Theo Von, Joaquin Phoenix, in my eyes, anti-Semites. Theo Von's just too stupid. He is one of the dumbest MFers you'll ever find. He's just, his is pure ignorance. Maybe Joaquin Phoenix, same thing. I don't know, but they're both acting like anti-Semites right now. All right. Rude rundown number 4. Meghan Markle and Prince Harry's Netflix deal ends amid content flops. So Netflix has ended a $100 million 5-year deal with Prince Harry and Meghan Markle. And that was signed in 2020 after producing 3 underperforming projects. Meghan's lifestyle series, With Love, Meghan, that debuted in March. 5.3 million global views. Oh my God. It ranks 383rd and failing to enter the top 300. How bad can you get? And it dropped from the worldwide top 10 after 6 days amid all kinds of social media mockery. And then Harry's documentary called Polo. And then another one called The Heart of Invictus. 500,000 and 300,000 views each. Polo ranking 3,436th out of about 7,000 shows. The Heart of Invictus, probably right around 5,000. So, of course, Netflix didn't go, God, we got to cut these losers. So Spotify previously terminated a $25 million deal in 2023 after funding 12 episodes of a disastrous podcast by Meghan called Archetypes. Here's the ugly truth. The only thing that the world, especially Americans, care about, well, no, Brits, even worse, care about out of this couple is the dirt they dish on the royals. That's a staple of royal news that the people eat up, the dirt. Without that, and a combination of racial fatigue, they blamed all their ills on racism from the other royals. And the fact Americans don't like elites, which is what they ooze, it's no surprise the collapse of their media empire. Rude rundown number 5, Mortal Kombat producer shifts explanation for Johnny Cage's absence in the first film. Mortal Kombat 2 producer Todd Garner, he recently clarified the decision to exclude Johnny Cage from the 2021 film, and that goes against his prior rationale. He initially claimed Cage's omission on avoiding the white savior trope in 2024 Inverse interview. He noted that pre-Black Lives Matter discussions that centered the plot on original character Cole Young instead. But in recent IGN interviews, Garner revised it, stating that Cage was benched due to concerns audiences wouldn't accept an arrogant actor as a lead among superpowered martial artists, leading to Liu Kang's role as a wise protagonist. Well, that's a lie. They didn't want him in the movie because he was white. It was a white, strong character. And remember, 2020, Black Lives Matter, it was a bigoted, it was a racist decision. Now he's trying to tone it down. Why? Because Johnny Cage is in the second movie. But it's going to be Carl Urban, who's really actually a beloved actor. I thought he was kind of old for the part, but I saw the trailer. He pulled it off. He's going to debut as Johnny Cage in Mortal Kombat 2. That comes out October this year. And this is after Urban researched karate tournaments to build the character's backstory. There is a trailer. The first trailer of Mortal Kombat is phenomenal. You got to see it. It's a throwback to the 1980s cheesiness. The Stallone, the Sly Stallone, and the Arnold Schwarzenegger type films. In fact, ironically, this morning, I was like, what am I going to watch tonight? My better half, my beautiful wife, is gone visiting a friend in Palm Desert. And I'm here in San Diego. And I Put the previews of Rambo 2. Oh my God, that is so cheesy looking. But that's what this trailer is a throwback to. You got to watch it. So post-track data for the 2021 Mortal Kombat film indicates that about 17% of the opening weekend audience was Black, with an estimated 14,000 Black theater goers. And all that's based off domestic box office figures. So what they're saying is we couldn't have Johnny Cage because we didn't want to alienate 17% of the audience. One, that would not have happened. That would not have happened. Now, that was the 2021 film. When I tried to research it for the 95 and 97 films, I couldn't find the data. But this is a game based off of multiple, very diverse characters. And it's the franchise that is loved. It's not just Johnny Cage or the other characters. It's a franchise where all the characters are loved. So I don't believe for 1 second that 17% would have gone, no, I can't watch this movie. Johnny Cage is in it. They would have welcomed Johnny Cage because he's a fan favorite. So this is nonsense. It's just the only trope here is a trope of bigotry from Hollywood. All right, let's close the show out with a few individuals. I'm a product of the 80s as a child. It was a rough week for us. Jazz legend Chuck Mangione died at 84. I played some of his music on my trumpet. I was one of the best trumpet players in the state of North Carolina back in the 80s. Chuck Mangione, he's a celebrated jazz musician, famous for his flugelhorn and trumpet work. I actually play the flugelhorn. And trumpet, you play one, you can play both. But he died from natural causes at age 84. He's best known for his 1978 hit single, Feel So Good. Feel So Good. That's on YouTube. Check it out. It's a wonderful song. Really mellow, just get you in the mood, the flow. He composed other songs, Chase the Clouds Away for the 1976 Montreal Summer Olympics, and Give It All You Got for the 1980 Lake Placid Winter Olympics, which is kind of foretelling because the hockey team gave it all they had, and they gave us gold against a superior Russian team. He earned 2 Grammy Awards, Best Instrumental Composition in 1977, and the Best Instrumental Performance in 1979. Here's what you may not know. He voiced himself in a recurring role on Fox's animated series King of the Hill from 1997 to 2009. He was in 11 episodes as a celebrity spokesperson for Megalomart, with running gags involving him always playing Feel So Good and hiding in the store. He wasn't appearing in the Hulu revival series. This is kind of old, you know. And that's coming out in August. So rest in peace, Chuck. You made a lot of people smile. Rest in peace. Now there's one that everybody knows. Malcolm Jamal Warner, The Cosby Show, died at 54. Obviously, we all knew him as Theo Huxtable as a child there. He died, obviously, unexpectedly at 54 during a family vacation. He drowned while swimming off the coast of Costa Rica. That was last week. He and his 8-year-old daughter were caught in a rip current. He was reportedly trying to save her when the incident occurred. They saved rescuers, Anglos, for all you guys always playing the race card, rescued them. Well, they rescued the daughter, and they pulled him out when this was occurring. The bystanders were unable to reach him in time. It was a beach near Cocles, very popular American joint down there where the drowning happened. It's known for its strong rip currents. Costa Rican authorities confirmed the death or cause as asphyxia by submersion and ruled death by accident. He drowned. So let me give you guys a piece of advice. I've been in the water most of my life, scuba diver, military training. You get hit a rip current, you got to swim parallel. I'd side stroke it. Very good stroke for conserving energy. But just side stroke it and swim parallel to the shore. It may 500 yards, a couple 100 yards, 50 yards. Doesn't matter how far you got to walk back, you're going to live. So just remember that. Rip current, taking you under, swim facing the shore until you exit the narrow channel of what will be fast-moving water. Don't fight it and try to swim towards the shore. You will lose. Again, he's best known for starring in The Cosby Show from 1984 to 1992. He also led Malcolm in 2015. I remember to see him in something that he wasn't typecast. He's survived by his wife and daughter. And Ozzy Osbourne, iconic Black Sabbath frontman, dies at 76. This guy had just drugged his body to death. Legendary rock music. He wasn't legendary. He became legendary in his second tour of life, meaning when he became the reality star. Well, he passed away at 76 after multiple health issues. He rose to fame as the lead vocalist of Black Sabbath. I was not a Black Sabbath fan. A few songs I enjoyed, but man, they would turn that up in the car when we would go to school. They loved them. And I was like, I hate this song. I hate this music. And I just wasn't into that kind of music. But some of the songs, I'm not into rap. There's catchy rap tunes, so there's always some of the a few catchy songs from Black Sabbath. But the band was formed in 68. Had a couple groundbreaking heavy metal albums like Black Sabbath in 1970 and Paranoid in 1970 as well. Then he was fired in 79 because he was a druggie. He launched a successful solo career, Blizzard of Oz, 1980, No More Tears, 91. He became the Prince of Darkness. He was a bad dude back then. The drugs just tore him up. But then when he did a reality TV series, got off drugs, he became a beloved weirdo. He struggled with Parkinson's, diagnosed in 2003, multiple surgeries and addiction. Tributes from bandmates. And the irony here, just 2 weeks ago, or 2.5 weeks ago, 17 days before his death on July 5th, Osbourne gave a farewell performance from a throne, a chair. He did a social from the chair. Back to the Beginning benefit. It was a concert in Villa Park in Birmingham, England. He reunited with original Black Sabbath members for the first time since 2005. He performed on the seated bat-themed throne. And 42,000 fans there. Guest acts were Metallica, Guns N' Roses. The event raised $190 million to charities like Cure Parkinson's, which probably about 60% of that's going to go to the charity itself. Hate to say it. But Osbourne appeared reflective and content afterward, sharing a final Instagram post about it the day before his passing. That happened to Chet Forty, ABC producer, created Monday Night Football. I was listening to him on a Friday, and somebody called in and said, well, Chet, what do you think of your life? This. And he went on like 5-6 minutes, it seemed like, talking about it. I'm like, gosh, it sounds like a eulogy. And he died that weekend. And then when I see this concert with Ozzy, that's what I kind of think. And I was like, he was content. Gave this concert. He's like, okay, I've come full circle. I'm so happy. I'm ready. And he is gone. All right. And obviously, we all know wrestling legend Hulk Hogan, dead at 71. He's another guy whose body was physically beaten up between roids and just the nightly beatings of wrestling. Had a cardiac arrest, had multiple health issues, died in Clearwater, Florida. Emergency services responded early Thursday morning. He had recent health rumors that had come up, including being on his deathbed post-surgeries. His wife, Sky, denied all those claims, but he died. So maybe there was truth to those claims. He was featured defeating the Iron Sheik for the WWF Heavyweight Championship in 1984. Became a heel, a.k.a. bad guy, with the New World Order in 1996. WWE Hall of Fame in 2005. Removed in 2015 over racial comments. Reinstated in 2020. He made racial comments, yeah. He said something privately. So I have been blessed to be able to hang with Latinos, blacks, and whites. I'm telling you for a fact, every single one of those groups have comfortable around me in private conversation, made deeply racially insensitive comments. So I'm not going to hold that incident against him. People I work with now, I've caught making insensitive racial comments. I've had to have conversation with people. So no, I don't hold that over him. And then he spoke at the 2024 Republican National Convention for Trump because he wants America to be great. And then the Democrats, it's not. He was the face of Hulkamania in the 1980s. He propelled the WWF from regional cards to annual revenues of $10 million as regional. It was an industry that was regional, North region, South region. It was different wrestlers, different associations that ran him. Vince McMahon, his father, owned one of the regionals. Vince McMahon bought them all out pre-1983, and then he turned it into a juggernaut in 1984, 30 million in the first year, 63 million in 84, 30 million, 63 million in 85, 881 million from 1980 to 1993. And that set the stage for WWE's $9.3 billion sale into 2023. Hogan symbolized strength and faith. He found God at the end. Less than a year ago, he was baptized. He inspired 1980s and 1990s fans as Hulkamania swept pop culture. It was everywhere. And with his recent Christian baptism at age 70, his personal ship came full circle. So God bless you, Terry. Hulk Hogan, dead at 71. And to all of you, Godspeed and God bless as you begin your new journeys that we will all face one day. There you have it, my friends. There's good news. DEI being abolished, we talked about. A reality check versus what Gunn and company want you to believe regarding Superman and how big of a hit it is. And how unbelievable is this Owens versus Macron story going to be? Next week, I'll touch on the Fantastic Four box office numbers after we get some hard data. And I got to be honest, it seems as if anti-Semitism is growing. This isn't the podcast for that. Well, it depends on what the story is. But man, I'll tell you, it just seems to be growing. And I touched on that with the Theo Joaquin Phoenix. And let's be honest, who's really upset that Harry and Meghan reality checks are finally seeing the light with Netflix deciding to stop wasting money after they have nothing but low-rated shows? They smartened up as Spotify did. And finally, it's not a sad goodbye, but just a goodbye to icons and those who made an impact on our lives as they begin their next journey. Before I go, don't forget to bookmark grumblingsmedia.com and follow us on YouTube, Rumble, Apple, Spotify under the handle Grumblings Media. Stay rude, but don't be crude. But challenge those who would destroy everything the red, white, and blue stands for. Until next time, I'm William del Pilar, your conservative Latino for the red, white, and rude. Oh, before I bid you adieu, do not forget to like and share this podcast. Until next week, I bid you adieu.
Hey everybody, this is Big John from Grumblings Media, and I just want to say thank you for watching our content. If you want to support our efforts here at Grumblings Media, just smash the subscribe button right here, totally free, or just go ahead and consume more of our great content. Click either one of these two boxes.